Do you ever look around yourself and take in the beauty of life? Whether Democrat or Republican, Christian or atheist, we can all agree that there is nothing quite like life. The simple 8 biological characteristics that segregate us from the inanimate. The single glorious trait that both scientists have been trying to perfect and artists have been trying to describe with equal difficulty. The simple complexity that has become so institutionalized that sometimes we forget why we are even alive. For far too many people, life has become too controversial, too complex, or even too meaningless that they choose to simply not recognize it. I too was one of these people until I got goats. The concept of goats was always fascinating to me. Their incredible courage, unwavering identity, and carefree nature. Although I couldn't label exactly what this concept was, I knew it was unlike anything I had ever seen. So when I was 12, my family made the decision to purchase 3 goats. They were all wethers, castrated bucks, and our sole intent was to show them at the fair. So that year, I worked all summer, leading the goats, holding the goats, and of course attending to their daily needs. When fair time came around, I showed the goats with meager success and continued on with my life. But I didn't stop there. My fondness of goats quickly turned into infatuation, and I expanded my horizons. Soon, I had several babies, was involved in 4-H, and before long, I had an empire of goats. I obtained several does, and my family invested in a new barn that could sustain our herd. The next year, I got several of my goats bred, and that spring, we had our first batch of babies. Only this isn't an American success story. It didn't take long for my goat kingdom to rule my life. But when empires are formed, you can expect conflict. And soon I experienced my first loss. It occurred the morning when one of my goats was kidding. My family had already been up since about 6 the previous night, when my goat first showed signs of contractions. We acted busy, trying to prepare for the goat labor, but in reality, we were just waiting. Finally, the time came when Jackie decided to kid. She had 1 baby almost immediately, and with the assistance of my dad, had 2 more soon after. One of the triplets was white, the other 2 were white with black stripes. I almost immediately was inclined to favor the baby that looked like a cow. I went to school the next day and returned home. I was going to go outside and check on the babies when my mom stopped me in a voice that held both empathy and fear. She told me that day, Jackie had sat on and killed her baby. I was quiet in denial, at first, but then came to recognize the truth. That day, I experienced the same grievance that so captivated me 2 years earlier. Life. So that day, I formed a new outlook on a simple 4-letter word. First, I learned that life is fragile. The balance between life and death is so fine that the ability to live should never be taken for granted. Also, I learned that you should never become too comfortable with where you stand. The moment you feel overconfident, life will send disaster your way. After all, this is life, not immortality. But perhaps more importantly, I learned that in life, you don't get to choose what happens to you and what doesn't. Similar to how I didn't get to pick which one of the babies survived, you don't get to choose which obstacles might cross your path. If nature has one job in this world, it is to piss us off. So why waste time in defiance?